Hello everyone, I'd like to thank you for coming. I'd like to read a brief statement. I've had the privilege to serve for the past 20 years as a public representative, 13 as a member of cabinet, 7 as leader of my party, and most of those as Taoiseach of this great country. It has been the most fulfilling time of my life. Working with colleagues, I've had the honour of helping to lead Ireland from unemployment to full employment, from a budget deficit to budget surplus, from austerity to prosperity, through a pandemic in which we saved lives and livelihoods, through Brexit when we prevented a hard border between North and South and protected our place in Europe. I'm proud that we've made the country a more equal and more modern place when it comes to the rights of children, the LGBT community, equality for women and their bodily autonomy. More recently, we've led the country through an inflation and cost of living crisis, the worst of which is now thankfully behind us. We've made significant steps towards affordable childcare and universal healthcare, making access to both more affordable for more people. We've made work pay better, with the implementation of a national living wage, statutory sick pay, lower personal taxes, improved family leave, allowing parents to spend more time with their children in those crucial early years. I'm happy that during my time as Taoiseach we were able to honour my commitment to double spending on the arts, culture and sport. This is making a real difference now and will continue to do so into the future, fostering and assisting the artists and the sportsmen and women of the future. We provided leadership by increasing our spending on international development, and we've expanded our diplomatic footprint around the world, building on Ireland's already considerable soft power. The National Broadband Plan is underway, bringing fibre-based internet connections to every home, school, business and farm and community in Ireland, which the critics said shouldn't be done. We've established the technological universities and the Rural Development Fund, and since 2011 we've quadrupled overall annual investment in public infrastructure. That's meant considerably more investment in priorities like housing, healthcare facilities, school buildings and climate action. And I am deeply proud that we as Irish people welcomed over 100,000 Ukrainian refugees to our shores when they needed our protection, notwithstanding the challenges this brings. In my time as Taoiseach, we reduced consistent poverty and income inequality. Housing construction has more than doubled, with 500 people becoming homeowners each week for the first time, the highest number in almost 2 decades. Of course, there are areas in which we have been much less successful, and some in which we have sadly gone backwards. But I hope you'll forgive me if I leave it to others to point them out on a day like this. They will receive plenty of airtime and column space. When I became party leader and Taoiseach back in June 2017, I knew that one part of leadership is knowing when the time has come to pass on the baton to somebody else, and then having the courage to do it. That time is now. So I am resigning as President and leader of Fine Gael effective today, and will resign as Taoiseach as soon as my successor is able to take up that office. I've asked our party General Secretary and Executive Council to provide for the new leader to be elected in advance of the Ardèche on Saturday, April 16th, thus allowing a new Taoiseach to be elected when the Dáil resumes after the Easter break. I know this will come as a surprise to many people and a disappointment to some, and I hope at least you will understand my decision. I know that others will, how shall I put it, cope with the news just fine. That is the great thing about living in a democracy. There's never a right time to resign high office. However, this is as good a time as any. Budget 2024 is done. Negotiations have not yet commenced on the next one. The institutions of the Good Friday Agreement are working again, and our trading relationship with the UK in the post-Brexit era is settled and stable. The new Taoiseach will have a full 2 months to prepare for the local and European elections, and up to a year before the next general election. My reasons for stepping down are both personal and political. I believe this government can be re-elected, and I believe my party, Fine Gael, can gain seats in the next Dáil. Most of all, I believe the re-election of this three-party government would be the right thing for the future of our country, continuing to take us forward, protecting all that's been achieved and building on it. But after careful consideration and some soul-searching, I believe that a new Taoiseach and a new leader will be better placed than me to achieve that, to renew and strengthen the team, to focus our message and policies, to drive implementation. And after 7 years in office, I don't feel I'm the best person for that job anymore. There are loyal colleagues and good friends contesting local European elections, and I want to give them the best chance possible. And I think they have a better chance under a new leader. I am standing aside in the absolute confidence that the country and the economy are in a good place, and that my colleagues in government from all three parties, Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil and the Greens and the Oireachtas, will continue to work hard for the nation's best interests. On a personal level, I've enjoyed being Taoiseach, leader and a cabinet member since March 2011. I've learned so much about so many things, met so many people who I'd never have got to meet, been to places I would never have seen, both home and abroad. And I am deeply grateful for it. And despite the challenges, would wholeheartedly recommend a career in politics to anyone who's considering it. However, politicians are human beings and we have our limitations. We give it everything until we can't anymore, and then we have to move on. I will, of course, continue to fulfil my duties as Taoiseach until a new one is elected, and will remain as constituency TD for Dublin West. I know inevitably there'll be speculation as to the quote-unquote real reason for my decision. These are the real reasons. That's it. I have nothing else lined up. I have nothing in mind. I have no definite personal or political plans. But I'm really looking forward to having the time to think about them. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank my party, my coalition partners, particularly Micheál and Eamon, my constituents, colleagues and staff for their loyalty and their phenomenal work, and I'm going to thank them all in person in the near future. Most of all, I want to finish by thanking the people of Ireland for giving me the opportunity to serve them, and I promise I'll keep working for Ireland and my community in any way I can in the future. Thank you very much.
Applause for Leo Varadkar as he became emotional at the end of that statement, confirming that he is going to step down as Taoiseach and leader of his party in Ireland. He said he had both personal and political reasons for stepping down, but he believed that his three-party coalition government could be re-elected, but he felt the right thing to do was for them to find a new party leader. He acknowledged that there would be a lot of speculation as to, as he put it, quote unquote, the real reasons for his resignation, but he said this is it. He said politicians are human beings, we have our limitations, and he felt that after 7 years as party leader, that this was the time, and that he of course started by listing his achievements as he saw it on unemployment, on steering the country through the pandemic, and on, of course, Brexit, saying the country now was in a more stable position on trade and with both the UK and the EU. But as the journalist who broke this story described it, this is a political earthquake. Let's go to Jennifer O'Leary. What do you make of that statement? How big a deal is this announcement?
Good afternoon. Well, as you said, to reflect the accuracy of your assertion, it is a political earthquake. No one saw this coming, not least his cabinet colleagues. I understand his announcement came as a surprise to many around the table this morning. Now, he outlined in his speech outside government buildings his reasons, pointing to both personal and political reasons for stepping down. But let me be very clear, his resignation as party leader of Fine Gael does not affect the constitutionality of the Irish government. He will remain in post, as he signalled, as Prime Minister, as Taoiseach, until a new one is elected. But here is the thing, it does increase the pressure on the Irish government in terms of the calls for a next general election, which has to be held before springtime next year. Now, Leo Varadkar, in his statement, pointed to the personal reasons, seeing himself, as he described it, as no longer the person who he saw fit to lead the party, to lead his party into the next general election. Leo Varadkar in office will be his legacy. Many will point to will be well. He described it himself in his speech in terms of his handling of Brexit, the handling of the economy. But there are many issues within the Irish economy, not least a young generation who, as they see it, are locked out of housing. But today's announcement in Dublin certainly comes as a big political shock. And Leo Varadkar, remember, was Ireland's first openly gay Prime Minister, also half Indian. I mean, he grew up in an Ireland where divorce and homosexuality was illegal. So for many on both sides of the Irish border, he would be seen as the embodiment of the change within Irish society. But certainly his announcement this morning that he is to resign as leader of his party and effectively make way for a new Prime Minister, a new Taoiseach, has come as a massive, massive shock.
And he said he's got no particular plans on a personal basis as yet as to what comes next. It has been turbulent with these two referendums on changes planned to the Constitution, which the government lost. Is that seen as an understandable reason for this announcement?
I would think that in government circles and in political circles in Dublin, there is not a straight line between the Irish government's loss of the recent referendum on women's place in the home and care and today's shock announcement. Leo Varadkar is somebody who previously signalled that it was his intention to retire from politics before he reached the age of 50. Well, today he's 5 years ahead of that goal. He is stepping down as leader of his party at 45 years old. And it certainly gives his party and the government, as some might see it, a clearer run in terms of building up their election message ahead of the next Irish general election. And certainly in part of his statement outside government buildings in Dublin earlier, I mean, it read and it sounded like very much a party political statement. He was talking about, full employment, about the Irish economy, about his handling of Brexit. He is setting the scene, if you like, for the next leader of Fine Gael to come in and to bed in for a time, possibly, before the Irish general election is announced. But certainly in political terms, there is blood in the water because it increases the pressure to call a general election, as some would see it.
Jennifer O'Leary now, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Well, I'm joined now by Pat Leahy, political editor at the Irish Times. Your reaction to this announcement?
Well, it's a bit of a shock, obviously. Nobody had seen this coming. I think that when the dust settles, people will see it as both. And the Taoiseach mentioned this in his announcement that has just concluded at government buildings, that he's doing it for both personal and political reasons. He's been full-time politician almost all his adult life. He's been Taoiseach since 2017. And I suppose he's at a stage in his life, he's in his mid-40s, he's at a stage in his life where he's looking at his options. And I think his conclusion was clearly that not alone did he really not want to spend the next 5 or 10 years in politics, but that the political currents were such that he could see an advantage for his party if he departed now. And that's very much the framing that he was giving this decision when he spoke at government buildings just now, that he was doing this to give his party a better chance of returning to government after the next election.
And if that is the reason, We take that obviously as face value, and he acknowledged there's going to be a lot of speculation about the real reasons. Is now a logical time for that kind of decision? Because he did talk about, the change of leader and giving them, as you said, enough time to build momentum.
I mean, yes and no. You've got to think that if his plan, and I don't believe that it was, but if his plan was always to go at some stage before the next election, that he might have been better off changing, or Fine Gael, his party, might have been better off changing its leader before the midterm switch in the Taoiseach's office that we saw take place at the end of 2022. And just, so your viewers know the background to that, it's a three-party coalition here between two big centre-right parties, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, and the smaller Green Party. And as part of that deal that was put together in 2020, Micheál Martin, the Fianna Fáil leader, was Taoiseach for Prime Minister for the first half of the government, and Leo Varadkar has been Taoiseach for the second half of the government. But now he's cutting that short. Time is relatively short as well until the next general election. It must take place within a year. It can go one more year at the very latest. But there has been a lot of speculation that there might be an earlier election, particularly with a lot of fairly informed speculation suggesting that it could take place in the autumn. I guess all bets are off on that now. And after there is a new Taoiseach in place, a new leader of Fine Gael and a new Taoiseach in place, which will take place over the coming weeks, then I guess he or she is going to have to make a long-term decision, pretty short order on that particular subject.